Hey there everyone, this is Bob Martin, the RCSubGuy with the NautilusDryDocks.com once again, and got a new project to share with you. I'm super excited about how it performed. We literally got back from the pool about 15 minutes ago and wanted to share it with you as soon as possible. So Skipjack, let's take a closer look. So some of you may recognize this model. It's a 1/72nd scale. It is the Mobius model's plastic model conversion. It's about 42 inches in overall length. I'm going to say it's about 5 inches in diameter at the widest point, which actually means you've got a lot of flexibility in terms of installation of a control and drive system. In this particular case, I've got something that is not typically used, and that's an OTW 3.5-inch dive module. And the reason that it's not very common is because this particular one is set up in a custom configuration in terms of lengths. It works out absolutely perfectly, and as you will see very shortly, it behaves and performs absolutely flawlessly in this boat. Very excited to show that to you. But before we get to that point, I want to give you just a brief overview about how we set this boat up, what goes into it, and yeah, let's take a closer look. So this particular hull was actually created by a gentleman by the name of Steve Neal out of California. He's a professional model maker. You can see he did an absolutely beautiful job on the assembly, painting, and weathering of the boat. Turned out really, really nice. All of those details come stock in the Mobius Models kit when you get it. As I said, it's a plastic model kit made out of styrene plastic, just like your standard, car model would be if you put those together when you were younger. Of course, this is much, much larger, but it has just about the perfect size to have a lot of presence on and under the water. Obviously, all of the RC running gear was custom built. We did use the plastic parts for the dive planes and such, but as you can see, there's a cast white metal propeller on the back, and of course, all of the linkages and drivetrain are all installed afterwards and do not come with the kit as you would get it out of the box. If we take a look at the RC components, the guts of the boat, we have a lithium polymer battery pack, and this has been waterproofed, and I'll be doing a video on the procedure to do this a little bit later on, but it's completely encapsulated in clear plastic, so you'll be able to see if there is any leaks. You'll see condensation inside that plastic, but the ends are sealed. And it is completely waterproof. So a 5-amp battery, 11.1 volts. This is the cylinder, that 3.5-inch diameter cylinder that I was telling you about. Going from the front to the back, we actually have a waterproof connector here. And thinking about this a little bit more, we could actually do away with this central connector and just use this XT60. Use a little bit of dielectric grease on this connection, and it holds up underwater really, really well. Would save a little bit of additional cabling there. Inside, we've got our waterproof seal for our forward dive planes, our waterproof connection for the power that goes through the main bulkhead in the front. This is the gear motor, bidirectional, that pumps water into and out of the ballast tank. And this is the solenoid valve that stops water from flowing back when it is under pressure. We've got our forward dive plane servo, and this is the DC unit, the depth cruiser unit, and that's available on our website at NautilusDryDocks.com. Basically, the way that this unit works has a port that's open to the exterior water, and it monitors your inputs for the forward dive planes, and when you are at a depth that you want to maintain, you simply take your hand off the stick, The unit records the pressure value and uses these forward dive planes to attempt to keep the boat at that depth automatically. It works exceptionally well. This is actually one of the first boats that I've used it in, and as you'll see from the pool video, it maintains depth in an excellent manner. Central section is the ballast tank. You can see a little bit of water in there. In typical OTW dive module fashion, it's hard to get all of the water out because it is a sealed tank. One thing I will note in here, in order to get additional ballast volume, this tank is vented. So there's a small 1/16 diameter hole that actually goes from the top of the ballast tank into the dry compartment. And the air, when that water is filling, it gets compressed and spreads evenly throughout the entire cylinder. And that allows you to use more volume in that ballast tank. But you just need to watch that all of the water is evacuated from the ballast tank before you ship a cylinder like this, because it will flow into the dry part, which is not a good thing. Moving into the back, we've got our rear dive planes and rudder servos, an automatic pitch controller, and that's connected to the rear dive planes, and that basically automatically attempts to keep the boat on an even keel. And then we've got our main electronic speed controller, which controls the main drive motor, and our receiver. So that's the cylinder in a nutshell. Everything is installed, functional, and working absolutely perfectly. Everything is controlled by a 6-channel radio. It's a high-tech Laser 6. Older radio, but still an excellent unit. You power it on with the central switch there, but the way we've got this set up, you've got your rudder control on the right stick, horizontal. You forward dive planes, or in this case, fairwater planes, are vertical right stick. Left side horizontal is your ballast control. If you move it to the right, the boat will dive, and if you move it to the left, it'll surface. And then you've got the throttle on the ratcheted vertical stick on the left side. The rest of these switches are unused except for this one. That rotary dial is the override for the automatic pitch control on the rear dive planes, so you can actually dial in a neutral tendency for the boat to travel using that, and that'll move the rear dive planes up and down. So that's it. Those are the main controls that control this particular boat. So it is now time to show you how everything goes together, how you would prep this model for the pond. The good thing about this, you can actually keep the cylinder on your workbench, run the battery to it, power it up, and you can run it dry on your workbench to test all of the functions of it without having to actually put it in the boat. I recommend that you do that before every run out to the pond. Check it on the bench, install it, check it in the model, and then you go to the pond. Too many times we've gone and something's been wrong and we've had to turn around and come back. It's not a good feeling. Let's take a look at the inside here really quick, and we'll see how everything is set up. We've got our main drive shaft here, and that's connected obviously to the propeller. We have our linkage for the rudders, and we have our linkage for the dive planes. And you can see they've got large, beefy magnetic connectors on there, and those mate up to the rear of the dive module. In the bottom of the boat, we've got lead weights, acts as ballast to keep everything stable. And then in the front, we've got a pocket that the battery sits in. Installation of the cylinder is very, very easy. Basically, you tuck this wire through here, and I didn't touch on this earlier, but this is actually a hose. Goes all the way into the cylinder, and that is what the antenna for the receiver runs out of. You can see it all the way inside there, and it's capped off. The other good thing about this, you can remove the cap, dunk your cylinder completely in the water, blow into it, and that will allow you to test for leaks. And if there is one, you'll be able to see precisely where it is coming from. So we are going to simply set this in place, and these knurled nuts go in these holes in the bulkhead, and you're going to match this up Slip that over the drive shaft. There's a stainless steel set screw that gets tightened down, and that locks everything in place. Magnetically connects, magnetically connects. Front goes down. We've got a large elastic band, rubber band, and that hooks over these hooks in here. And I'm not going to be able to do this without my special tool, but basically it just hooks over these hooks, stretches over the top of the cylinder, and that's what holds it down from pulling up and away. Last thing to do is drop your battery in place, and that stops the cylinder from sliding forward. So now everything is locked in place. To power up the model, you simply connect the power cables, and you're ready to go. So I've got the cylinder in, I've got the cylinder powered up. I want to show you the bottom of this upper hull here, and this is the linkage for those forward dive planes. You can see them working right there. Magnetic connector, and of course the challenge is the dive planes are located in the upper hull, but the linkage for them is in the lower hull, and so we need to get those two connected. And basically the way that works, you drop this down, the magnet snaps in place, and that's it. Nothing more to do. You are going to want to tuck this cable out of the way alongside the cylinder, and I just wrap it over the top, drape it over the top so it's out of the way. It's not going to get pinched in any of these pin and holes that secure the upper hull in place. Battery cables tucked out of the way of the linkage for the forward dive plane. So let's test some of these functions. I'll show you them actually in use. If Jason wants to come a little bit closer here, we'll start at the back. We've got our rudder linkage. You always want to have about 30 degrees of deflection for any control surface in the water. Anything more and it just acts as a brake. Anything less and you're leaving performance on the table. As I mentioned, I can override those rear dive planes, and that's them in action there right now. And if I tilt the boat, if you take a look at those planes, you see them moving all on their own, attempting to keep the boat on an even keel. We've got our throttle as well. Nice, smooth, perfectly quiet. Works really, really good forward and reverse. Moving to the front, we've got our forward dive planes. And then the last thing is the pump, and I'll just kick this on momentarily. That's it. This pump does not like to be run dry, so you always want to make sure that there's either fluid in it or you only run it for just a second or two to check the functionality. So we've checked all the functions. Everything's working. All we got to do now is put the top on. This lip goes in the back, and you'll see as you put this on that it basically just drops in place. That little snap was the forward linkage getting locked in place. The hull is now down, and then there's a simple single stainless steel screw that goes in the front up under the lip there. You tighten it down with a screwdriver. Everything's locked in place, and the boat is ready to go. Well, there you go. 1/72nd scale US Skipjack class RC submarine, put together with the help of OTW out of the UK, Steve Neal out of California, and yours truly, Bob Martin, the RC sub guy with the NautilusDryDocks.com. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure and subscribe. I try and put out new content as often as possible. Check out my website. Lots of cool RC submarine kits, resources, parts, components, and other information for you. If you have any questions, reach out anytime. Bob at RC-Sub.com. I would love to hear from you. Again, it's Bob Martin, the RC Sub Guy. Thanks for joining me, and we will catch you next time.